You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
You're listening to Mission Log the Orville, an episode-by-episode discussion of the adventures of the crew of the USS Orville. Welcome to another episode of Mission Log the Orville. This episode, Heroes, the fourth of 6 comic books written by executive producer and friend of the show, David A. Goodman. This is the one where Talla cosplays as a superhero to protect a family of Akudans. My name is Mike Richards.
I think it's a little bit more than cosplay, but I'm Jessica Lynn Verdi. Mission Log the Orville is a conversation that depends on your participation. Please, we have some fun because the Orville is fun, and then we'll discuss the meanings, morals, and messages because that's what we do on Mission Log the Orville. And then we get to hear your thoughts, ideas, and etc. when you tell us what you think at ML_the Orville on Twitter, Mission Log Pod on Facebook, or you can even email us at missionlog-the Orville at roddenberry.com. I'm sure there's an actual U.S. Postal Service mail address somewhere.
Oh, snail mail it to, just right to Jess's house.
I would love that. Not really. But we should get a P.O. box.
We should get a P.O. box. Yeah.
I would love that. If you're watching this on the Roddenberry YouTube channel, just please hit like. Well, no, I'm not begging you. Hit like and subscribe. What are you doing? And remember, we may use your comments on an upcoming episode. Mike, whew.
That's a lot. You know what? She does so much more than cosplay in this one, but I didn't want to give it away all right at the bat.
No, I totally understand. I just want to say she's like a vigilante. I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing.
No, it's a good thing.
But it's a good cosplay. She looks good. And I think her boobs went like 5 sizes bigger.
I hadn't noticed.
Oh,
I did not notice that
enjoy
whatsoever.
Mike's recap, everyone.
All right. Heroes, Part 1. 2416, the fourth planet orbiting star HR 5070. In the home of the Akudan family, a pre-industrial civilization bearing a resemblance to the Zelayans, a girl named Aki is reading a story to Talla. The story is about Zandia, hero of the Okudum, a farm girl who freed her people from oppressors. In the story, a woman is about to be struck down by a tyrant's sword, as she's told that she will get what she deserves. Just then, the voice of Zandia is heard from above, saying what she deserves is an apology. Sadly, it's time for Talla to leave. She's been staying with the family, posing as a lonely traveler in order to study them. Talla bids farewell to Aki and her parents, Mike and Denise, and says she'll try to return someday. On the science vessel Wilson, Talla explains to Captain Mosley that the Okudum have no apparent cultural similarities and no Zelayan super strength. It seems that the interest in the planet stems from the fact that it contains deposits of dysonium, aka rocket fuel. But no, the Okudum are far too peaceful and their lifestyle too idyllic to consider mining their planet. So the Wilson breaks orbit, confident that they, and any other race encountering them, will feel the same way. Right now is about a good time for the opening credits to roll. 2421, the Bridge of the Orville. Talla explains to Ed and Kelly that there's no way the Okudum would have a quantum reactor. Yet there is one, as well as a ship of unknown configuration. Ed signs out a shuttle, or maybe Gordon signed it out. You never know with those two, because they're like, oh, who signed out the shuttle? Oh, God, I don't know. And he takes Talla, Claire, and John to check things out. Under cloak, they put eyes on the mining operation controlled by the Nas, a race of pointy-eared Millennium Falcon co-pilots who are not members of the Union. Ed decides to take John and learn what they can about the Nas, while Talla and low-key disguised Claire make contact with Aki's family. Meanwhile, Ed and John realize the Okudum are being forced to mine dysonium by hand, which is bound to make you real sick real fast. Back at Aki's house, Denise explains that the Nas came about a year ago, forcing everyone to work in the mine. Their leaders resisted and were killed for it. Now Mike is getting sick from dysonium exposure and overwork. He warns Talla and Claire to leave before their foreman, Illis, finds them and puts them to work. Segueing brilliantly to Illis, the bewhipped little guy spots Ed and John reconnoitering the mine and sends a drove of Pequeños to get after them. But Ed and John are able to escape in the cloaked shuttle. Aki, now a young woman, gifts the story of Zandia to Talla. After all, it's for kids, and she doesn't need it anymore. Back on the Orville, Admiral Perry says the Union isn't in a position to help these people, as it could be seen as an act of war. While Kelly Exposition adds, the Union doesn't need any more enemies right now. Does the Union ever need more enemies? Ed wants to contact the Nas and open negotiations, but Admiral Perry orders them to go to New Rochelle before sandstorm season begins. Talla finds Ed's decision to go along with Perry's orders infuriating to the point that she opens a jar of pickles on the conference table before retiring to the mess hall. There, the story of Zandia gives her an idea to take a few days leave, just a little time off. Oh, and she's going to need the chief medical officer and the chief engineer. Ed decides not to ask any questions, which is probably wise. In the Okudum village, the Nas force Mike back to work as Aki tries to protect him. One of the Nas strikes her and says, "You deserve more than that." A voice from above is heard saying, "She deserves an apology." Part 2. Talla, in full-on Zandia mode, attacks the Nas as she's taking fire from their weapons. Not a problem. The suit is made of Mocklin-Barty armor, and between that and the Zalayan overboob, Talla is completely protected. Her sword, made from hull plating, can cut through anything, and she makes quick work of the Nas. She jumps away in a single bound as Aki looks at her and says, "I know who she is." Reporting the event to Illis, he orders his underlings to deploy the Juggernaut and kill her. Talla suits up to lead the Juggernaut, aka a space tank, away from the village, as John and Claire blow up the mining equipment real good. Talla subdues the Nas tank commandos and sends it back to Illis with a note saying, "Illis, I'm coming to get you." Lying in wait, Talla confronts Illis in his office. Poor little guy can't leave. If he did, his superiors would kill him, so he has no choice but to stay. After all, Zandia hasn't killed anybody, and while Talla won't kill Illis, she's at an impasse. If they can't convince him to leave, her only option is to stay and protect the Okudans. Claire, ever the voice of reason, points out that they still have a few days left. Except in the meantime, Illis is connecting the dots. You see, a few days earlier, he told Aki to fetch him some water, as another villager interfered and accosted him. He doesn't know who this villager was, but he suspects Aki does, and that she's the person posing as Zandia. As Aki goes to get water from the well, the Nas show up to interrogate her family. She returns to find her parents slaughtered just as Talla arrives to check on them. Talla is taken prisoner and brought back to the Nas ship to be publicly executed. As John and Claire discuss a plan to rescue Talla, Zandia, albeit in a slightly different costume, plunges her sword through Illis's chest and slays the rest of the Nas leaders. The remaining Nas depart the planet as Talla apologizes to Aki for letting her down. Aki tells Talla, "You can go. We don't need you anymore." On the shuttle, Talla laments, "What did we do to that poor girl?" John replies, "We didn't do anything. They did it. Now she's the hero." Talla thinks of a quote from a book the captain gave her. "There are no heroes. In life, the monsters win." The end.
Really uplifting, really positive message, really happy ending, really. Good job,
Yeah,
Mike.
definitely one of those, I've said it before, kind of one of those let's get the hell out of here endings.
Yes.
That, was made famous in City on the Edge of Forever. In the
Correct.
original Star Trek, the original series, that did not go the way we wanted it to, but there's nothing we can do about it now. It's just time to move on.
Yeah, I almost question how many fun things we could talk about in this episode before we have all of the morals and meanings and messages in this episode. So
Yeah, I noticed when I was putting my background notes together that I've got an awful lot of those and not many lighthearted observations, but we'll just go ahead and jump in and see where we go.
yeah, let us know what's going on with this episode.
Written, of course, by David A. Goodman, artist David Cabeza, and colorist Michael Atea. Part 1 was released on November 4th, 2020. Part 2 released on December 2nd, also 2020. Set between seasons 2 and 3. And the first part happens in 2416, where Talla is visiting the Okudum for the first time, and then the rest of the story happens in 2421.
So completely unrelated to this at all. What's up with your shirt? I think it's a daisy.
Do you? Oh,
yeah.
This shirt is from Starbase Indy. Which is a little con in Indianapolis.
Very
and it's
cool.
A Pride Month shirt. It's got the rainbow colors in a stripe in front of what looks like the Regular One space station. And it just says Starbase Indy convention. I think it's from 2019 or 2018, something like that.
Very cool.
So I thought it'd be a good Pride Month shirt to wear.
It's the least we could do. I love a good rainbow. So
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out.
yeah, it's cool. You got cool shirts.
Thanks. We talked about David Goodman's ability to think of a story, sit on it for a while, and wait until, the iron is hot to strike, or until he finds the right channel for it. He actually pitched this story in season 1 in the writer's room. And he envisioned making Alara Katan kind of a superhero on an alien planet. But it was rejected by so-called showrunner Seth MacFarlane. And if he doesn't like the idea, man, it ain't going to go anywhere. That's all there is to that.
Well, I don't think his instinct was incorrect.
Yeah, it's just, there's a certain amount of stories they had to tell. I think season 1 was already very Alara Katan heavy.
Sure.
There were a number of stories already, episodes dedicated to that character. But David was able to use it as this for the comic book. And he said Jessica Zora was over the moon when she learned that she would be a comic book Zorro, which is...
that's so... Yeah, she seems like a cool chick who... I mean that with respect. Who would be awesome.
Yeah, yeah, and I think this, this turned out to be the maybe a really good Talla Kiali story that we never really got, right?
100% my thought.
She showed up a few episodes into season 2. Deflectors was a story that was centered on. There was some thought that was written. It was a great story, but people think it was sort of centered or inspired by the woes of the love life of previous Salayan security chief Alara Katan, and that it wasn't really a Talla Kiali story.
No, but it didn't not work, right?
It worked. It worked. In fact, I remember that was a story that made me hate Clyden.
Oh yeah.
For a long time.
I think it was a stronger episode in making us hate him rather than and you're right, because we've talked about this before in previous episodes. She gets dropped in, and she doesn't get a lot of character building, which also makes sense why this maybe wasn't the greatest intro to Alara, because what they did so well in season 1 was give us episodes that we needed to see the character growth. We get set up for what each character needs at the episode 1, and then the first episode we get with Alara is, I don't want to be captain. I can't do this responsibility kind of thing.
Yeah, and we get Talla, who's more, mature, more confident, more, I would say, fully realized.
Yes.
And not as much kind of the way you'd pop in a character into Star Trek the original series. There's no backstory, they're fully realized. Captain Kirk on day 1 is just like Captain Kirk on the last episode of season 3. Bad example.
Hey, we're all doing with what we can. We didn't get the 5-year mission, man, unless you watched the anime.
That's it, man. Nobody wanted Turnabout and Trigger to be the last one.
No one. That's why there's so many conventions. But I think actually the grander lesson here is in someone that like David Goodman, who's like, okay, I totally hear you that this is not the right thing for season 1. That doesn't mean it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
Or
just that there's no room for it.
Learning how to not let that be discouraging is such a good overall lesson to apply to so many different things in all of our lives. if someone doesn't like the thing you're doing, either it's annoying or go find the right room for it. There's like two options, and I love that.
And we're planning on having him back on the show, but that was that background on how he came up with the story, being a big Zorro fan and kind of holding on to it for the comics. He shared that on the Quantum Drive podcast.
Oh, very cool.
Not too long ago, May 10th, 2022. HR 5070.
I'm sorry.
5070.
HR Puffin Stuff.
HR Puffin Stuff. Sigmund and the Sea Monster is that's an actual star. It's about 70 light years away, so I guess at maximum speed they can make it home in about 7 hours. Based on their 10 light years per hour, and that's actually visible in the night sky. Speaking of actors, this was interesting. I actually got this from the Orville Wiki fandom site. Captain Mosley. And as soon as they pointed it out, I was like, yes, that's exactly right. Resembles an actor named Yaphet Kotto, who was he was in Homicide, Life on the Streets in the 90s, but listeners of this show may know him more from Alien or The Running Man.
There you
or
go.
The first movie I remember seeing, like with my dad and my brother, that like wasn't a kid's movie that they were taking me to, but it was a movie they were going to that they brought me along for. And that was the first Roger Moore James Bond film, Live and Let Die. And he played the main villain, Dr. Kananga.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so he was in all of those. And also, if you didn't catch his first name, Yaphet Kotto was the inspiration for the character Yaphet's.
Was it really?
Name, yeah.
So, of course it's that.
Right. So, yeah, it would have to be that.
My guess is that the, number one was Sigourney Weaver.
That definitely did look like that because that would have had like an Alien tie-in for both of them.
Oh my God, 100%. It's that.
Yeah. So it could have been that. I picked up on the name, which was just, they just called her Barrett, which was Majel Barrett. And there was definitely a
Majel thing there. The hair,
there was,
for sure.
Kind of like more of like a Loxana Troy
there was definitely
era,
a Loxana thing
curly
there.
hair era. Anyway, Majel Barrett, no introduction needed for this crowd. The first lady of Star Trek. I'll just leave it at that. And David Cabeza tweeted in November 2020, the Naz soldiers he tried to design as a futuristic 18th century European soldier uniform, like the ones the bad guys had in the old Zorro TV shows. A little bit of French, Spanish uniform of that era, also with the weaponry that they carried. But great costumes across the board, man. I really liked them.
I couldn't agree with you more. They look so comfortable on that planet.
I kind of want those clothes, yeah. And you notice that it's kind of funny that every once in a while I'll see like airline pilots out at like social events, and they'll be wearing shirts with like the the little straps on the shoulders that that hold their rank insignia, but they're just kind of like and they've got like the button down pockets and stuff like that, kind of like we wear as part of our uniform, but that's what they wear as their casual shirts too.
Right.
And I couldn't help but notice that Ed's wearing blue. Claire's wearing green. I can never really tell. I'm not great about being able to distinguish between the reddish orange that like Gordon and John wear and the orangish red that security wears. That's really more of like a deep red though. But John's wearing kind of orange.
Different though. You're totally right.
And Talla's wearing red initially before she suits up.
It's actually really clever. I don't think that they use that color scheme moving forward. Like, I don't think every time that they dress in civilian, that they do their color scheme correlative to this. But it kind of would be cool if they did. There
was an episode. It was the Billy Joel episode.
Oh, sure.
With of season,
Fishes.
I think that was season 2. Yeah. Nothing left on Earth excepting fishes. And Ed went out like in his street clothes, and it looked remarkably like like captain clothes.
Yeah.
Like it was kind of like dark blue and black with like
I think I'm gonna do a rewatch just for the outfits,
seams and stuff like that. And I remember commenting then that it reminded me of Kirk in wearing his street clothes, out to kind of petition the admiral to borrow the Enterprise and go help Spock out, and he ends up being stuck in those clothes for the next 4 years apparently. That no, I'm just kidding. It was only like 6 months.
No, which is fine
in universe, and but it looked just like his Monster Maroons. Like Kirk would be the guy that like all his street clothes look like his uniform.
100. He doesn't have an identity except, which is why it's so weird to see him in the. Okay, it's too much. It's too much.
It's all too much. That was different. That was All the World Is Birthday Cake, where it's all too much.
It's all too much for me to take. The thing that I've lost it. I had it. It was funny to me. There it is. So because you got me this beautiful like coffee table book. They just use inserts rather. You see the cover art, but it's not like. It's not, it doesn't say addition to or whatever. There is just a circle of Ed's face when they have the conversation about, I feel like I should ask questions, but I don't want to ask questions. And it's this wonderful full page of them having this conversation of, I know what you're going to do. I don't think you should do it, but I do think you should do it. And they just even have a whole panel where they don't say anything. It's so wonderful. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, it's so wonderfully encapsulated in this moment. Just Ed looking okay.
Plausible deniability.
It's so good. This whole episode itself, it's hard. There's not a lot of levity in it, and so those kind of moments really stand out. Because at first, when I was reading it, I'm like, why would the Admiral be like so adamant about not letting them get involved? And then I realized, it's Ted Danson. So that's why.
So, and I was trying to, put on my writer's hat, which I don't normally do with the show. That's something that our big brothers on Mission Log do. But they, if this was Victor Garber, Admiral, not Perry,
Cabeza.
Admiral Halsey,
yes,
he would have said, "I'll buy you some time. I'll send another ship to Sandstorm Season in New Rochelle, and you can stay here and try to make contact with the Nas." Like, I think that would have been his answer. Perry's just like, "No, request denied.
I don't care about slavery." I'm thinking
There's
about
nothing we can do to help these people.
It was so upsetting because again, I'm reading it quickly. And it's comics, so it's all visual, and I'm just seeing I was being very racist. It was white hair, old dude, so I'm thinking it's, Halsey, and it's not. Yeah. It's Perry.
Yep.
But we did do a pretty good job of like categorizing. Like each admiral isn't just, okay, let's just put in Ozawa for this episode. They have specific like slants of thought, and so it each one serves different parts of the story, which I think
they do.
Really,
and
use it well.
It's just like I don't know if there's like with us, we have a chief pilot on call, right? So if we have a question anytime of the night or day when we're out flying around, we can call and be like, "Oh yeah, what should I do?" I never call them because
you're so good.
I know what to do.
You're so
no,
good.
I'm just kidding. No, it's a resource and you should reach out to
that's
them.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
100%. So I wonder if they're just like, "Oh my God, fucking sorry." I wonder if they're like, "Oh my God, it's Admiral Perry's shift. Can we wait 16 hours until it's Admiral Halsey's shift?"
I'd love to see that in an episode. Oh, we have so much static and interference. We can't get you.
Oh yeah, we'll call you back.
Well, and that actually, I had the same exact question. I was like, well, what is the hierarchy? What is the reason that they're talking to different admirals and when? But I guess you're right. It has to be ships. Like some of them, or they're busy and engaged with a different ship or something like that.
Yeah, or maybe it's, I don't know if you call space geographic areas, but maybe certain sectors report to different. I don't know.
No, it's fascinating though.
But yeah, the seriousness of the episode is definitely giving off to me Private Little War vibes, which is the one where the Enterprise goes back to a planet called Neural, which they might as well just call it Neutral. And
Clever.
And they revisit a planet that Kirk was assigned to as a younger officer. I think an ensign. Don't hold me. He might have been like a Lieutenant JG or something. But way in the past, got to be friends with with a guy named Tyree. Peaceful thing. In fact, he even was the guy that recommended, don't interfere with these folks. They got an awesome society. It's going to develop into something great. And we kind of feel like that was the first sort of genesis, at least in the original series, of mention of anything like a Prime Directive. Or General Order 1. Yeah.
That's right.
But along came the Klingons, arming the either the Hill people or the villagers. I forget which ones. And then the village people. I'm sorry, the villagers took up arms against the Hill people. And I guess if they had all like kind of conglomerated into one community, they could have called themselves the village people. But they didn't. Instead, Kirk provided arms to the other team and kind of balance of power because that was the best bad answer they could come up with.
It's a bad answer.
Yeah,
but it's
and at
an
the end,
answer.
you know what they did? They got the hell out of there.
They got the
because it was the
hell
best
out of
bad
there.
answer they could come up with. So I was trying to slip something by you. The Okudan people could not help but think that they were named after. I did not see this named anywhere. Mike and Denise Okuda, who were visual designers, artists throughout the Berman era. Work on the Orville, work on For All Mankind.
So wait, why did you want to slip it by me?
Because I was calling Aki's parents Mike and Denise.
You did slip it by me, and how would I have known that?
I don't know. I was just
too deep of a
maybe
cut.
making up names like Evan and Chris or Chandler or whatever they came up with.
Did we forget to create names again? Yeah.
We did, yeah. So I called them Mike and Denise because I thought that was just kind of a tribute to Mike and Denise Okuda. Also, very famously did the remastering or the added special effects of the original series.
That's
during
incredible.
That time
That's
frame.
like an incredible tenure of work. That's fantastic.
Oh yeah, they are amazingly gifted folks that have made just an enormous contribution to the Star Trek franchise over their career.
I'm peeping all your notes, and I just want to talk about all.
Cool. What's next? What do you want to talk about next?
Well, I want to talk about your theory about the cat suit.
Which part of that?
All of it.
So John had to be noodling on that thing for years, man. He is like, to be able to say like, all right, we're going down to this planet. There's this, her name's Sandia. She's this superhero down there. John's like, I've got the perfect thing. It's made out of Mocklin body armor.
He definitely whips it together.
I've got a sword that goes with it. Like they only had a few days off, and this was 27 hours ago. Now the fact that, because what did Talla ask for a few days off, right? So
yeah, leave.
But okay,
Short leave,
few days leave. So they get down there. She's in full on Sandia mode, and John had this suit ready to go 27 hours ago. And add to that the fact that Claire's like, we still have a few days left down here.
Well, you have to imagine the replicator's going to do a lot of work, but I think
That's true.
You've got a point, though. Let's extrapolate this further. I think he's had the idea of the suit for a while, which is such a great narrative idea. Because why does he know how to build this kind of suit so quickly? I think he hooked up with a chick that left a suit that was like this. There's definitely, he had the model for these ideas. Or is he like a total comic book geek who's
Could be that.
if I needed to make a sword right away,
All I know is it did not take him very long, just via the math, to get up to speed on this.
It's so, you know what it is? I wonder if he knew Talla and what Talla needed, and he could put it together real quick. Like, he knew her measurements and everything.
Oh
He's
yeah,
like,
he knew her measurements. He's gonna get more intimate with her measurements in season 3, but
That's right.
we already covered that. We're not even jumping the timeline now. We can look back on
That's
that.
exactly right.
But the other thing I really liked was Ed's Union branded coffee mug. Like there's a lot of talk of the Janeway coffee mug, but this thing was stainless steel.
It's got like
with
Yeti
with the logo
vibes.
facing out. Yeah, it was great. Not a lot of not overly space coffee cup just kind of a nice, simple, elegant design. I won't. If they would start making these things, I'd just be like, shut up and take my money.
I know, and like. If people are really weird about merch, and this is like my little soapbox, like people start getting mad at people that are involved even peripherally at people for merch not being there, or not like we saw it with a friend of ours who was like attacked for not having an answer on a thing that they shouldn't have had an answer
Right.
on. Merch is awesome. Sometimes it's not. I don't know what my point is. It's just like it'll be there, or make it yourself. You're not supposed to. I want that Yeti branded mug, though. You're totally right.
And if not me, who? And if not now, when? Or however that thing goes. I could buy a bunch of Yeti cups. Probably take them to a machinist. Get the thing dyed. I don't know if that's licensed or not.
It's definitely not.
On a completely different note, we do now have an Amazon Associate store. So things like the library edition are showing up in the show notes. A place like that, you can click on that link, and we're trying to propagate that Amazon store with things that are relevant to the show that we talk about.
That's very cool.
Yeah, so that's something that we put together just in the last week or two, and expect us to kind of formalize our mentioning of that probably during the intro and outro or something like that as we
makes
go forward.
sense. Sure, very, very cool. I love that.
So I love the way Talla just explained away how she got into Illis's office. How did you get in? It wasn't that hard. That should be everything. How'd you blow up the Death Star? It wasn't that hard.
It wasn't that hard. Well, I love what you said when you were doing the recap. She opened a can of pickles and the door was open.
That's for her, it wasn't that hard. I mean, you think that maybe leave some wreckage, but I actually did kind of forget about that she could have just like pulled the door out.
She could have done that, but I love that though. They're not wasting time trying to explain it, but we do need the question to clear it up so that you're not walking around going, "How did she get in?"
100%.
I will say this too. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm reading a book right now called Replay. And I love the fact that it just moves along without so much as really trying to describe a room. Like when I'm reading a novel and it's like, you walked in, the light was dim, the wallpaper was this color, the carpet was that. They just get right to it, man. They skip all that exposition. They just get right to just keep that story moving. That's what I'm all about. I like that.
And there are some situations where description is fun and delicious. But economy of words is a real thing. Which I'll save my thoughts for another day.
I'll say economy of words after my 1,000-word recap.
Which is exactly right.
Listen to.
I'm so much better with economy of words when I write because I have time to edit as opposed to when I speak. So I'm right there with you. The thing I wanted to talk about was watching. Every time they're at the table, for some reason, I've always envisioned it being broken. So it's so cool that they finally broke it. And it saves so much on budget to not have to watch her break it on screen. It was such a smart use of, we can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
So let's break the table.
That's a really good point. So speaking of Talla and not being that hard to break into Illis's office or break the table or do anything else.
Right.
Before we move on to the next section, do you think those ropes would have held her?
No. No. But
she'd just been shot, so maybe.
She was
I don't
not.
know.
No, they not even shot. She was electrocuted. Right?
Yeah, she was. And I thought,
tased.
okay, maybe she's unconscious. And then I zoomed in on the picture, and she's eyes wide open.
Oh, then they definitely wouldn't have held her. Maybe. So for a second, with the way that it was illustrated, I thought she was just pretending to be knocked out, and then she actually stabbed Illis.
Oh, yeah.
For a second.
Right.
So I thought, that would make sense why she's allowing herself to be chained up like that.
And I don't know if you noticed the subtle difference in the costumery, but where apparently nothing's as tough as Selayan overboob, nothing else.
Oh, no, we caught that.
Yeah, nothing else is as tough as Okuden abs.
There you go. I like
That's
this.
it. So
I like
they're
it.
each just playing to their strength.
That's right. And they are all looking good. Looking good and functional. Like,
Nice.
very important. I'll see you on the other side.
All right. So we've come to the part of the show where we explore the big ideas in the comic book heroes and discuss the meanings, morals, and messages to see if they align with the Roddenberry Star Trek philosophy. Jessica,
They don't.
They don't? Are we done?
Done.
So, first thing I want to talk about is sort of this trope of, technology versus paradise.
Okay.
Right? There's, the side of paradise in Star Trek. There's the paradise syndrome. One was
There's
the
Risa.
spores that just make you happy, but you don't like move. You don't get any progress. You don't move things forward. Like the community leader said at the end, we wasted the last 3 years. We didn't build anything. We didn't do anything. The Paradise Syndrome was where Kirk fell in love with Miramani. He fell in love on average. People think more, but was on average about once per season. Right? We had Edith Keeler.
In love is different than
Yeah, right.
in lust.
Yeah, than just trying to manipulate some poor woman to get what he wants,
Or
which
hit
was
them.
usually the rest of the episodes. Which only 5% or so of the episodes did he have any kind of relations with a female. So that's overstated. But Miramani, who we think bore his child after he left. I don't know. We never went back there to check.
Why do we think that?
Because she was pregnant.
Was she? I don't
Yeah.
remember this.
I don't remember if she lost the child or not. She may have lost the child.
I don't remember this episode at all.
The Native American episode. I am Kirok.
No, great.
Nothing? You got
I
nothing?
haven't watched the last season in a long time.
Okay. And also Requiem for Methuselah, where he fell in love with Flint's robot girlfriend. So those are kind of like the three big, lost loves, I think, of James T. Kirk.
Sure.
The last one having to do with paradise, which is how he got off on this tangent.
There we go.
But technology versus paradise, I look back at, let's look at like what do we even want to talk about? Like, this is pre-industrial revolution, right? Aki said she was a farm girl just like me. So I'm thinking like agricultural society or gregarian farm life, that kind of thing. Was life like that better than, after there were things like farm equipment to help lighten the load a little bit? Was it better before other kinds of technology, like look what we have now, information at your fingertips, automobiles, lawnmowers, I don't know, big equipment to, work the farms, work the land. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I buy into the technology versus paradise being sort of mutually exclusive of each other.
They're certainly not, and the ideal of what I think the Orville and Star Trek try to say is, like, once you don't have to toil for something, you can stop fighting for that thing, and I think that's more akin to a paradise. Like, if we were
believe that when the machine does the work of a man, that a man becomes a little bit less of a man.
Well, there's something to be said for that, right? There's a lot of people that want to have a return to, like, the simplicity of having to toil the land and use a horse to hoe the...
I wouldn't last a day.
But that's just it. And is this paradise right now? The problem is we can't compare our world to the technology that we have. We can't say our world is a paradise by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
In an alternate universe, the things that we have probably might not be used for as much evil as it's being used for. I'm sure there's a simulation where this turned out okay, and but like the corruption of it all. Let's put it this way: the Nils, the bad boys, the bulldog babies, they saw that these people didn't have an opportunity or a way to protect themselves, so they were able to be taken advantage of. So in any way, even paradise can be taken advantage of. I don't think paradise exists at all. I just don't think it does. I think paradise is a concept rather than an attainable reality.
There's the thing that, and this was an independent note, but now in my head I'm seeing how they sort of interconnect. When Ed and John witnessed the Okudum being used as slave labor, just literally using wheelbarrows in their hands to mine the Dysonium. The conversation between the two of them went, slave labor saves on wear and tear of your equipment. And I think John replied, especially when the labor is disposable. There's, an argument that what put, the industry of slavery in jeopardy in the 1860s was the development of equipment like the cotton gin that enabled, those tasks, those functions to be mechanized. Now, at the same time, the biggest industry in states like Virginia at that point had moved from agriculture, from farming, to slavery, to acquiring slaves, selling slaves to Western states. And that's where the threat was, their existential threat, was that if these machines came along, slavery would no longer be necessary. Their industry, their meal ticket would go away as well. So to me, that technology can actually have some really beneficial aspects to it if you are willing to accept that sequence of events.
By no means am I comparing slavery to oil, but in much the same way, oil companies and lobbyists holding on with a death grip to cars and not accepting climate change, or that even if climate change didn't exist, folks, we'd still have a better, more healthy society if we didn't use as much gas. We just
totally
wouldn't.
And that kind of brings me back, last week to the point that I made, that whenever anybody is in power, my default position is that they're trying to hold on to power. Even if they had the best ideas, the most altruistic goals, as soon as they get in that seat, if they don't hold on to that seat, they're not going to be able to do what they want. And these folks that are pulling these strings, like you said, with that example, the oil company, pick anything else. If their position goes away, so does their entitlement, so does their way of life, and then that whole house of cards just tumbles around them. So they're going to try to hold on to that with however they can.
Steve Bannon is a great example of this that I think not a lot of people know about, but he is one of the most wealthiest people of knowledge when it comes to climate change. He has personally bought up stores of research that prove or help understand what our world is going through, so that in the event when it finally can no longer, he's keeping it to himself so that he can still benefit from that information not being out there. And then once we have to have that information, he will also be the primary stockholder of that information.
Right.
It is insidious, and we have no control over it, and it's very frustrating to talk about it, which is why Talla must have been very frustrated. My question to you is, do you feel like Kelly and Ed were super laissez-faire about, I guess we can't do anything about it? When it's important to them, they get involved, and it was important to Talla and they didn't get involved.
So, and that's exactly what what I was just typing as you were asking me the question. If you can tell from that, it was that out of character for Ed.
Wow.
I think it 100% was out
really
of character
was.
For those two. But
He was very Pontius Pilate. He was like, well, I guess go.
They all decided that they were going to disregard Admiral Ted Danson's orders and go ahead with, go ahead and try and help there. One, I don't think anything would have changed, other than the fact that maybe Ed had gone with them also, which would have been a terrible idea anyway.
Right.
But I think it would have ended up in the same place. I did think it was out of character for Ed and Kelly to capitulate so early. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So here's the thing. Spoilers. All of Talla's actions get Aki's parents killed. and also turns Aki into a vigilante who is, robbed of her innocence. And she wasn't the one that did this, but it hastened what was probably inevitable. Like, Aki's dad was probably not far from death the more they made him, work. Because he was dealing with the Dysonium, obviously, firsthand.
And by Aki's dad, she means Mike Okutum. Correct.
And Denise, they end up, I'm sorry, hopefully they don't in real life, but they end up dead because of Talla. And I don't know how you live with that guilt, honestly, because it brought more attention onto Aki than would have been.
Yeah,
to begin with.
I think, and I wonder, like, to have this play out the other way, does Dad die? Because these guys aren't going anywhere, right? There's significant mining deposits on this planet that the Union identified. If they're going to mine it by hand, and another planet would have done
that too, by the way.
Right. If they're going to mine this by hand, they're not going anywhere, right? They're going to. Her parents are going to die. Are they just making the men do it? Like, I don't think there was any talk of Denise having to get out there and mine Dysonium.
No, it didn't seem that way. I don't know if they are just making the men do it or if it was just... Yeah. Because they were chasing after John and Ed, so it's possible.
Right. But either way, Dad was probably going to end up... He probably wasn't long for that world with his, health and exposure to Dysonium and being overworked and probably undernourished and just being viewed as disposable. So then what happens at that point? Is his death met with the same kind of rage, and desire for revenge that Aki found herself in? I'm going to say probably not.
No, I think she definitely made it worse. But by trying to... Would the guilt have racked her if she didn't try to do anything? Also, how did Aki make that suit so quickly?
That's a really good point. Like that I don't know. Like, I actually thought maybe Talla was like stripped of her suit, and then I was like, nope, she's still in the suit.
Yeah, she's very much in the suit still.
Yeah. Like, if it could, like, just one little thought bubble or word bubble of get her out of that ridiculous suit and bring her back to the ship.
No, yeah, because also Aki's is a little bit more modest too. God, I had a whole really
she was showing a whole lot more arm than Talla was showing.
They were just amplifying the features that they appreciated.
That they
something
had.
You said totally went over. It didn't go over my head. I had a great thought about it, but it's totally gone now. Sorry, everybody. I was going to be brilliant. So go ahead. Go ahead. Say something more brilliant than me.
No, yeah, I just I felt like it was a little out of character for Ed and Kelly.
I agree.
But on the other hand, I think I think it helped move the story along, without a whole lot of dialogue. Those sandstorms in New Rochelle can be quite.
Those poor people.
I keep saying New Rochelle. For those of you that aren't familiar, David Goodman is from New Rochelle.
Correct.
So that's why I think that planet with the sandstorms was named Rochelle.
Rochelle.
And, either that or maybe he was going for the Rochelle, the musical vibe. I don't know.
You got these deep cuts that no one else has.
Illis mentioned to Talla that I'm not afraid that you're going to kill me because you haven't killed anybody. But if I leave here, my superiors are going to kill me, so I'll take my chances with you. Does that make Illis a sympathetic character at all?
It plays to the morals of Talla. And I think, I don't know that, I think that doesn't outweigh the sins of his behavior. They probably are just not a very nice people in general, but could he be treating these people with a little bit more respect and still mining Dysonium? Probably. Like, I think his actions are actively killing people, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think it humanizes him enough.
I mean, if nothing else, it's just like completely oppressive. Could Talla have been the one to hold the talks right there? Like, look, I've got you dead to rights right now. Maybe I won't kill you, but I can certainly get in the way unless you get better equipment for these people, pay them a fair wage, have timed off, maybe dental, maybe medical, something like that. You know what I mean? She could have sort of acted as, in that role would have been maybe another solution. But during that brief timeout where she got back and she was like, okay, what do we do going forward? And her idea was to stay. And Claire said, whoa, we got a couple of days to think about this. Sadly, that's when Illis, who I don't think is a sympathetic character at all, decided to go and have Aki's family or her parents killed, or at least it ended up that way after they showed up there for the interrogation. So John made something go boom real good, is his way. And while Talla didn't kill anybody, do you think that explosion might have killed some people? I don't.
From a existential perspective, yes, because now they have to dig with their hands.
Yeah, good point.
They really didn't do a lot of thinking, these people. The thing is, I don't know that that's why this is let's get the hell out of here, because what do you do? Can you just walk away from these situations? John might not. I would like to hope that Ed wouldn't oversee the murdering of people. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. He boomed in front of Claire, not...
Right.
Who knows, man?
Yeah, I think it was more of like a sabotage. In my head canon, they didn't really say it, but it was more of like an equipment sabotage kind of thing.
Yeah, it could have been like an internal boom. Who knows?
Yeah.
I also did not realize that those creatures were as tall as they are. I certainly thought they were like shorter, because they look like the little people in Galaxy Quest.
Oh, okay. All I could think of was Lando's co-pilot.
Yes, which is totally fair.
Yeah, well, except what I noticed is that these guys have pointy ears and the other ones don't. But that's not much of a difference. That's like a difference between Vulcan and human, man.
They're the same.
Hardly anything. Yeah, we talked about this with New Beginnings. That was the Penguin Planet.
Uh-huh.
And sort of the victims of war and people that are left after the war is over with. This is not technically a war. It's maybe an invasion or oppression. There, I'm sure, are examples of factories by certain or companies of certain countries going into other countries, setting up shop, having basically the only alternative for the indigenous people to work at that factory for a while until they decide to close up and shut down. And then it's just nothing but poverty and zero infrastructure out of there. Part of the economic condition on the Delmarva Peninsula is stemmed from the fact that it used to be a huge site for one of the giant canning corporations. Food corporations.
Wow.
And they had, employed, many people. And then they left. And there was literally nothing for these people to do.
I mean, even our own country can do that to our own people. It happened in Detroit,
Sure.
St. Louis, it's happening to right now.
Yeah. 100%. So, victims of the people sort of in the aftermath of that, or the aftermath of that oppression is kind of another, take on this that we have. The people were innocent, man. They were happy. They were evolving. They were, in that state of, that seems comparatively like a paradise, where it looked like it was, Talla described them as being, idyllic and peaceful.
I just remembered, because I want you to get to your huge thought. But why did Talla have the authority to make the entire decision for the Union to not mine there? Just because it was her advice that it was a perfect, society, that it would have been destructive.
Yeah.
She was the one who was like, no, I don't think we should. And then they went, okay, great, we won't. But in a weird way, that her decision made it so that they were vulnerable to other people. They had to see that as They saw that there was a lot of Dysonium. They should have been able to know that, well, that makes them a little bit sitting ducks to some extent.
This goes back to the long and storied tradition in Star Trek to leave a planet and not put cones up around it.
Yes.
Like they should have put some cones up around this planet and said, "Don't come back here." And that's why I kind of got a little bit of a laugh in the to myself because I always laugh at my own, observations.
You should, you should.
The ship takes off, confident that neither they nor anybody else will
ever come back
and mine this planet, because of course they were going to get exploited by somebody else.
Yes, so that's what my grand important thought was, that Talla has decided the fate for this planet multiple times over.
Oh, so she's the worst.
She's the worst.
So they could have been like, hey, let's set up a protective, sphere around this planet. We can mine, but maybe in unpopulated areas, kind of do the duck blind thing. That's always worked out so well in other Star Trek stories.
Oh my God. All right,
mine that way.
So rudely interrupted you.
No, it's okay. But after these people leave, what's left behind, man? That innocence is gone, and I think it all hinges on the quote that Talla cited at the end from a really old book, and that really old book was, I think, it was one of the Game of Thrones books.
Was it really?
And it was in Game of
that
Thrones.
to
I'm
her?
not sure if it was the Book of Fire and Ice or if it was, one of the subsequents, but it was Sansa Stark, and she said, "There are no heroes in life; the monsters win." And all I could think about that was, what does that mean? And what I came up with was, if you're in a war and you have to fight a war, man, more often than not, you become the thing you're fighting, right? You think somebody killed your people, so you're going to kill theirs. Well, guess what? Now you're the monster. Somebody attacked your village, razed it to the ground. Went all Anakin Skywalker on them, and now you're going to do the same thing. Now you're the monster. And that's where I feel like what that quote means. There are no heroes in life, the monsters win. Because even if you're the good guy, as soon as you employ those tactics, now you become the monster, or you release the monster inside you. I don't know if that's what George R.R. Martin meant. I don't know if that's what Sansa Stark meant, but put in the context of this story, Aki became the monster when she fought back the way she did against the Nas.
That was my exact takeaway too, Mike, and it's sad, and I think we should get the hell out of here.
We should. I'd like to end it just with a quote from Star Trek Into Darkness. Not everybody's Star Trek film.
I love it.
Chris Pine is not everybody's Captain Kirk.
I love it.
But there was this line at the end. There will always be those who mean to do us harm. To stop them, we risk awakening the same evil within ourselves. Our first instinct is to seek revenge when those we love are taken from us. But that's not who we are. We are here today to rechristen the USS Enterprise and to honor those who lost their lives nearly 1 year ago. When Christopher Pike first gave me this ship, he had me recite the captain's oath. Words I did not appreciate at the time. Now I see them as a call for us to remember who we once were and who we must be again.
Thanks, Mike. Mission Log, The Orville is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Technical production by the inscrutable Earl Green.
Inscrutable, I say.
Inscrutable! Our website and your opportunity to comment and connect with us is podcast.roddenberry.com. If you're watching the live premiere on YouTube, join us right now on the Mission Log Discord to continue the conversation. Don't have access? Well, all you have to do is go to patreon.com/Mission Log, and you can join for as little as $1 per month. Imagine just $1 to interact with Mike Richards, Captain Mike Richards. Wow.
So silly. And Jessica Lynn Verdi.
Sure.
Join us next time on Mission Log The Orville as we continue to discuss the Orville Dark Horse comic books.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.